Welcome to this episode of Retirement Crusaders. Today I want to show you how I select investments for retirement. Now, what I don't want people to do is something that's very unsystematic. For example, you turn on CNBC, you see some talking head talking about some stock and you think, ooh, that's a good idea, and you want to run out and buy it. Don't do that. So don't listen to some guy on CNBC. Don't look at an article in Money Magazine. In other words, don't follow tips. Okay, that's what you don't want to do. That's the worst possible thing. There's much more systematic ways to select investments which will have a better payoff in my experience. So for example, a lot of people, once they realize that following tips is not a good idea, they subscribe to, say, an investment newsletter. Well, I'm not really that crazy about newsletters that are written by one author, because then you get one opinion. So for example, I've used on occasion some of the newsletters from Motley Fool. I have found those to be inconsistent, hot and cold. They pick some winners, they pick some losers. You know, all in all, I didn't find it to be that great of a service. Now, there are really good services out there that have long track records. They're not free. So one of them I used to use when I was a financial advisor was Value Line. A great service. I don't know how much it is now. It's probably up to about $1,200 a year. Kind of expensive unless you're a really active investor, but a really great service where their recommendations pass through a lot of filters and a lot of analysts are weighing in before they print their reports on selected stocks. So that's a really good source. Another good source, which is probably much less expensive, Investors Business Daily, investors.com. They have something called the Leaders Board, or Leaders, I think. And if you subscribe to that and invest in the leaders have had a really good track record. So that system has worked really well. Now, a system that I've used, or a service that I've used for the last couple of years that I really like, is called Seeking Alpha. Now, by the way, there's a link below in the description where you can get maybe a short subscription to Seeking Alpha at a reduced price. Full disclosure, they will compensate Retirement Crusaders if you use that link. Just want you to know that, because we always do everything above board here. So let me show you why I like Seeking Alpha, and then you can decide for yourself if it makes sense for you. All right, so here we are at my Seeking Alpha subscription at seekingalpha.com. Now, you could start by just coming up here to the search bar and typing retirement income. Okay, and what'll happen, it'll bring up a series of articles by people who publish on Seeking Alpha. Now, one of the things I really like about Seeking Alpha is you'll see that for any stock, you can get 8 or 10 or 12 opinions from people who are active investors. Some of them are professionals. Some are just people who, basically have a hobby of full-time investing. But you can read each of their opinions and you can see how they think about these things. And by having a confluence of these different approaches or these different perspectives, you can make some really good decisions and, without a lot of time, get a super amount of detail about any individual stock. All right, so when I type in retirement income, the first thing we see is that, it starts to find a number of articles with the phrase retirement income. And you'll notice these are individuals or services that publish on Seeking Alpha. Now, so for example, the very first guy, Rita Mora, so he publishes prolifically on retirement income stocks. He's a retired CPA. Not only does he publish articles on Seeking Alpha, but he also has a newsletter that you can subscribe to through Seeking Alpha. So with just your Seeking Alpha subscription, you can see all the articles he publishes. If you subscribe to his newsletter, you can see additional articles. And I did subscribe for a year when I happened to have a lot of money that I wanted to invest. I wanted a lot of information, and this was a really good newsletter within Seeking Alpha to help me find some really good securities that I bought and I'm very happy with. But let's click on one of these articles. So this is a general article where it looks like he's mentioning a couple stocks. One is called ECC. Now, obviously, be careful when you see these types of yields. He will describe why the yield is so high and what the risk is. So you need to read all the details. Here's another one. His focus, by the way, are high yield investments for retirement. So that's his focus. He does a lot of analysis on these types of stocks. But here's the good thing. Let's say you read this article about ECC and you think, okay, well, that might be okay. Let me see what other people have to say about it. So if I copy the symbol here and then put it up here, it'll give me all the information about this company, Eagle Point Credit. It'll show me how it's done. Now, don't be concerned with this declining line. This is 2022 when most stocks are declining. So, everything in perspective. You probably want to look at a longer time period. Like I always like to click this 5-year button and see how something's done over 5 years. So that gives me a good idea. And by the way, with high income investments, you can't expect a lot of appreciation. So oftentimes you'll see kind of flat charts like this for high income investments. Now, right away, just by looking down here, first of all, we see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 10 different authors that have weighed in and done an analysis of ECC. So you could read what each one of them says. And right away, at a glance, you can see the green, the dark green, strong buy, 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 buy. Here's a guy who says sell, hold, hold. And so now these go back over time. This goes back to actually about 3 months ago, 4 months ago. Some of these go back a year or two, and they're all dated, so you can see whether they're current or not. Now, the nice thing about this is that if I click on one of these, okay, for example, his rating was a sell on this stock, and he said to sell it here, which was just recently. But the nice thing is it shows you that since he made that recommendation, the change, I'm sorry, each time this little thing pops up, but the change was a minus 2%, and at the same time period, the S&P 500 was down 2%. Now, let's look at one guy who, a few months back, let's do this. Here's a guy who also said was a sell back in July. And so Seeking Alpha shows you on these little red dots that you see on the chart, this is when he said sell. This is when he also said sell. So one time he was right, one time he was not so right. So it shows you where they made their recommendation and what has happened since their recommendation. So that's kind of a neat little feature. All right, so the idea here is that you can read lots of different opinions about any particular security and form your own opinion without doing a lot of work, because these people, if you read these articles, they're really, really in-depth analysis of these securities. Okay, so that's a really nice feature about what Seeking Alpha is all about. Now, one of the next features that's neat is you can have portfolios in here. So you can connect your brokerage accounts. Like I have my accounts at Interactive Brokers. So my accounts are connected here. If I click on this, it would show the whole portfolio that I have in this Interactive Brokers account. And then it would track these stocks. Let me show you my watch list. These are stocks that I watch. I don't own them, but this is what the portfolio looks like if you put your own portfolio in here. It's got each of the stocks you're following, and then it shows you what happens each day and, the current price and the volume and all these details. The other really nice thing that it shows you is, look over here. There's 3 indicators that are shown for each stock. One is a quantitative analysis. So this is a combination of things that Seeking Alpha looks at to come up with a quantitative ranking. And if it's green, that means the quantitative ranking is very favorable. And if it's orange or red, it means it's not very favorable. Similarly, they show you what the rating of a particular security is from all the authors on Seeking Alpha that have written articles about the security. And then they show you the rating from Wall Street analysts the professionals that are the analysts that work for, Merrill Lynch and Morgan Stanley, etc. So you're able to see at a glance, what, 3 indicators very quickly. So as we scroll down here, so for example, you can see here's a stock that has, green all across. It's rated as a, really good quantitative indicators based on Seeking Alpha's little quantitative model. And then the authors on Seeking Alpha like it. And then the Wall Street analysts like it. So a lot of the stocks that I happen to be watching have these, 3 green bars. Now, obviously, having 3 green indicators here is not a guarantee of success. However, it's an indicator that the odds are more in your favor than less in your favor. As a matter of fact, let's see if I can show you this. Here's a little drop down on this item called top stocks. And if I click the top rated stocks here, these are stocks that Seeking Alpha has identified as they're green across the board. They're green for the quantitative, green for the authors on Seeking Alpha, and green in terms of the Wall Street analysts. So the interesting thing about this quantitative model that Seeking Alpha has created, if I go over here, it says quantitative ratings beat the market. They actually show you over time how their quantitative ratings have done, those stocks rated the highest, and you see they've significantly outperformed the market. So this is just something that you could follow, you could use. It's just one of the tools that Seeking Alpha throws in to make life a little easier by assigning these quantitative ratings, and it gives you a good indication of at least something that historically has had good results. And of course, with investing, remember, past performance is never a guarantee of future results. So in any case, these are their top rated stocks because they get green across the board. These aren't necessarily stocks that are good for retirement. They might not pay enough income. Of course, you have this column here called dividend yield, and right away you can see, well, that's a stock that pays a pretty good dividend, as is that, etc. So you can use this tool, screen it for the stocks that pay, hefty dividends, and this could be an initial place to start to find stocks that are good for you. Now, when I say an initial place to start, if you said, okay, I want to know more about this stock here, it's got green across the board, it's got a nice yield, you would click on it. Then you've got all the details about the stock. It's been rising nicely in 2022, even though the market's down. And then you could read, 1, 2, 3, looks like he wrote 2 articles. 4, he wrote another article. 5, 6, 7. So you've got 7 different authors to read their opinions. By the way, they all give it a buy or a strong buy, but you could read each of their opinions and then make your own decision. And the beauty of it is you're not relying on one person's perspective. You're relying on the perspective of individuals who have spent time really looking into these companies, doing an analysis, and thinking about the attributes of this company and their future performance. Now, one other thing that I think is really neat, I'll show you, is that let's go back to my watch list of securities. Now, I have all these, symbols that I'm watching of different companies that are of interest to me. But the neat thing is, of those companies I'm watching, if I scroll to the bottom of the list, there are articles of those specific companies. So each day, if I look at this, there are articles for each of the companies in my watch list. So if I want to really stay on top of these companies, there's articles and news on each one of them right below my watch list. Similarly, if this were a list of your own portfolio, you would scroll down and below would be articles, today's articles, yesterday's and the day before, I think they go back 3 days, of all the articles pertaining to the stocks in that portfolio. So it's a really great way, without having to do any research or look for things, just to log on, take a quick look at your stocks, and then be able to see, has anybody written anything? Have there been any announcements or news, which would also appear here, like earnings reports or press releases by the company or earnings transcripts? Those would all be on this section right here. So for this reason, I really like Seeking Alpha. I have found it to be a great service for selecting investments that are right for me. If it appeals to you, as I said, there's a link below. Click on it. We'll have other videos about other ways to select stocks. So please make sure to hit the subscribe button and the little bell icon so you'll get notified when we have additional videos about different ways, different methodologies to select stocks. See you next time on Retirement Crusaders.